There is a specific pattern to human suffering that does not vary much across cultures, decades, or personalities. You find something that works, a relationship, a career, a level of health, a financial position, and you build your sense of stability on top of it. Then it changes or disappears, and the ground shifts again. So you rebuild. You find the next thing that works, and you build on that. The cycle does not stop because you are doing it wrong. It stops only when you examine what you are building on. Swami Paramarthananda uses a precise image for this, a beautiful chair made of cardboard, covered in gold foil. For display purposes, it functions perfectly. You can show it to guests, photograph it, admire it, but the moment you transfer your full weight to it, it collapses. The world of objects, relationships, and achievements is exactly this kind of chair. Everything you can interact with in the manifest world, every body, every relationship, every institution, every experience is held together temporarily. It was assembled from parts, and anything assembled from parts will eventually fall apart. The chair's failure is not accidental. It is what cardboard does under full weight. The world's failure to provide lasting security is not a bad run of luck. It is what assembled, temporary things do when asked to serve as permanent foundations. The cycle of seeking, gaining, losing, and seeking again is driven by the assumption that the next stable thing is just around the corner. As Swami Dayananda states, expecting permanence from the impermanent is samsara. Whatever I am attached to, I lose in life. The problem is that every single thing available to the senses is, by its nature, perishable. The body is anitya, the mind is anitya, relationships are anitya, achievements are anitya. The anxiety that comes with depending on them is not neurosis, it is accurate feedback from reality. The real question is whether there is anything in one's experience that is not anitya, not just long-lasting, but genuinely imperishable. If such a thing exists, and if it is accessible rather than hypothetical, then the entire problem of seeking security in a changing world can be approached from a different direction. To answer that question, you first need a precise account of what makes something perishable in the first place. The word Kshara comes from a Sanskrit root meaning to flow, to leak, to drain away. This etymology describes not just obvious destruction, but the constant, low-grade seepage that defines everything in the manifest world. The category is far larger than most people initially assume. Kshara includes every being and every object that has a beginning. The moment something comes into existence as a product, assembled from parts, caused by prior conditions, it has already begun its departure. Anything that is put together must, by virtue of being put together, eventually come apart. What has a manufacturing date also has an expiry date. The two arrive as a pair. Every Kshara entity undergoes 6 modifications without exception: birth, existence, growth, metamorphosis, decline, roshas, and death. These are not random misfortunes that befall some things and spare others. They are the full arc of any object or being that exists in time. People often acknowledge the body as perishable while privately holding that the mind, or the finer aspects of consciousness, might be more durable. Kshara does not make this exception. Thoughts arise and subside. Emotions build and dissolve. Memories form and distort and fade. The entire inner life, every mental event, every feeling of me right now, belongs to the Kshara category. It is all namaropa, name and form, specific shapes that appeared within time and will disappear within time. Subtler things change more slowly, which can feel like permanence. Slow change and no change are entirely different. What makes Kshara objects Kshara is not merely that they eventually stop existing, it is that they have borrowed existence. Before the pot is made, there is no pot. After it breaks, there is no pot. The pot's existence is confined to the interval between two absences. This is precisely what distinguishes Kshara from the imperishable. The perishable holds its existence on loan, with a fixed term of repayment. We seek permanence from Kshara objects, things that exist only within the parentheses of prior non-existence and eventual non-existence, things that have begun their departure at the very moment of their arrival. If everything in the manifest world is perishable, Something has to account for the fact that anything exists at all. A pot breaks, but not into nothing. A body dies, but the elements that composed it persist. The Kshara dissolves back into something, and that something does not dissolve. This is where Akshara enters, not as a religious assertion, but as a logical necessity. Akshara means that which does not flow away. It is the changeless background that makes the very perception of change possible, the substratum that remains when everything Kshara has come and gone. Vedanta does not use Akshara carelessly. The teaching distinguishes two levels, and missing that distinction leaves the whole thing incomplete. The first is unmanifest matter, what the tradition calls Maya or the Avyakta. When this universe dissolves, the forms perish, but the material out of which they were made does not vanish. It returns to a seed-like, unmanifest state, waiting for the next cycle of creation. Modern physics reaches a similar conclusion through the law of conservation of energy. Matter and energy are never destroyed, only transformed. This level of Akshara is therefore called Pariname Nitya, changingly eternal. It persists, but it does not remain the same. The seed becomes a tree, the tree becomes ash, the ash becomes soil. The stuff continues, the form dies. The second level is pure consciousness, Brahman. This is called Kutastha Nitya, changelessly eternal. Kuta is the word for a blacksmith's anvil. The blacksmith strikes hot iron on the anvil repeatedly. The iron changes shape under each blow. The hammer moves. Heat passes through everything, and the anvil sits completely motionless, not dented, not altered, not even warm from the transaction. It supports every single change without participating in any of them. Kutastha Nitya is exactly this, the consciousness that underlies every experience, every thought, every birth and death, without itself undergoing a single modification. Pariname Nitya satisfies a physicist but not a philosopher. Matter persists, yeah, but it modifies. Only Kutastha Nitya, consciousness, survives without transformation, without any modification whatsoever. The iron being shaped is not the anvil's problem. The heat, the force, the noise, none of it leaves a trace. This is the precise quality of Kutastha Nitya. It supports the entire field of experience without accumulating any of it. Every joy, every grief, every life, every death, they all occur against this changeless background. The background holds them but is not held by them. A pot exists. It sits on a shelf. It has a shape, a color, a size. You can fill it with water or break it against a floor. But ask a simpler question. What is the pot made of? Clay. When the pot breaks, what happens to the clay? Nothing. The clay that was the pot is now broken clay, then powdered clay, then clay scattered into the earth. The clay never came into existence when the potter shaped it, and the clay did not cease to exist when the pot shattered. Only the name and form, the specific shape called pot, had a beginning and an end. The substance itself was never born and never died. Every perishable form in the universe, every body, every thought, every galaxy is like the pot. It has namarupa, name and form. It appears, persists for a time, and dissolves. The Akshara is the clay, the underlying substance from which every form is drawn and into which every form eventually returns. The Kshara does not stand alongside the Akshara as an independent partner. It is entirely and continuously dependent on the Akshara for its existence. Akshara is the adhisthana of the entire Kshara universe. The perishable world has no existence of its own and borrows existence from the imperishable. There are not two things here. There is one substance appearing in countless perishable forms. The forms are Kshara. The substance is Akshara. The mistake is identifying with the form and forgetting the substance, claiming to be the pot rather than the clay. The sixfold modifications, the Shad Vichara, birth, existence, growth, metamorphosis, decline, and death, all belong to the pot, never to the clay. The clay does not take birth when a pot is shaped. The clay does not die when a pot is smashed. Every event in the cycle of modification happens entirely within the domain of name and form. The adhisthana sits outside the cycle entirely. It is present throughout, providing the reality for each modification to appear, but it does not participate in any of them. The pot is genuinely functional. It holds water. But the pot's functional reality is borrowed reality. Look for the pot's independent existence. Existence that does not depend on clay, and you find nothing. The Akshara is not a distant absolute somewhere beyond the world. It is the very substance of the world. The perishable forms arise from it, exist within it, and dissolve back into it. Nothing in the Kshara universe can stand apart from its adhisthana for even a moment. But this raises a problem. If the Akshara is the substance of everything perishable, including everything broken, decayed, painful, and corrupt in the world, how does the Akshara remain pure? If the clay is the pot, and the pot holds sewage, is the clay not also soiled? If Akshara is the very substance out of which Kshara is made, then surely the clay shares the pot's condition. When the pot cracks, the clay cracks. When the pot is stained with mud, the clay is stained. If the Akshara is the material cause of a world filled with suffering, disease, Vichara, and death, how can it remain untainted by any of it? This is not a careless objection. It follows directly from the clay pot logic, and it must be answered precisely, because the entire practical value of this teaching rests on the answer. The objection assumes that being the material cause of something means sharing its modifications. Consider a raging fire playing out on a cinema screen. Buildings burn, people flee, smoke fills the frame. Yet when the projector stops, the screen is not scorched. When a flood scene plays, the screen does not get wet. The screen provides the surface without which no image could appear, yet it undergoes none of the movie's events. Every scene of terror or joy plays on it and leaves no mark. That is the relationship between Akshara and Kshara. The Akshara provides the existence ground upon which the Kshara world appears, but the modifications that belong to Kshara, birth, growth, decay, death, belong to the form, not to the substratum. The clay does not crack when the pot cracks. The crack is a feature of the pot form, not of the clay substance. The clay simply ceases to hold that particular shape. It never shared the pot's fragility. The word for this quality is asanga, uncontaminated by contact. Asanga does not mean distant or removed. The screen is in full contact with every pixel of the movie. It means that despite full presence, no attribute of the modification transfers to the substratum. Asanga describes only kutastha nitya, the changelessly eternal consciousness that supports all transformation without entering into any of it. Matter is imperishable only in the sense of pariname nitya. It continues while constantly modifying its form. The vapor is not unaffected by the heat that produced it. It has genuinely changed. Asanga does not describe matter. Matter participates in every modification it undergoes. The blacksmith's anvil takes the full force of every hammer blow. The hot iron is pressed against it, reshaped on it, cooled on it. Yet the anvil does not bend, does not heat, does not take the shape of anything struck upon it. It is the condition for all that shaping while remaining entirely uninvolved in the outcome. The suffering, anxiety, and mortality that belong to the Kshara body-mind complex are features of the form, not contaminations of the substratum. If such an Akshara exists, pure and unaffected, as the very ground of all experience, untouched by the body's birth and the mind's turbulence, the question is, what exactly is your relationship to it? Is it something outside you, or is it what you are? The immediate, unreflective answer is the perishable side. You have a birthday, you will have a death day. The body ages, the mind shifts, moods come and go. Everything you can point to about yourself is demonstrably Kshara. Vedanta does not dismiss this conclusion. It examines the instrument that drew it. You are aware that your body was born. You are aware that it has aged. You are aware of each thought as it arises and passes. You are aware of emotions, their onset, their peak, their fading. Now ask, what is the status of this awareness itself? Is it subject to birth and death? Is it young or old? You can observe the body aging, But has the awareness that observes it aged alongside it? Or has it remained the same steady light by which each successive change was seen? This is the work of discrimination between the permanent and the impermanent, between what is truly you and what is observed by you. The observer and the observed cannot be the same thing. If you can observe the body's changes, you are not those changes. If you can witness a thought arising, you are not that thought. What you are is the sakshi, the witness, the one who sees without becoming what it sees. The sakshi is present when the body is sick, but is not the sickness. Present when grief floods the mind, but is not the grief. Every modification of the body-mind complex happens in front of the sakshi, never to it. Swami Paramarthananda offers a sharp illustration. Open a newspaper to the obituary section. You can read every name there. Now try to find your own. You cannot, because to read your own name, you would have to be alive and looking. The one who reads obituaries never appears in one, at least not to themselves. The body will eventually stop. But the eye that would know that is precisely the one that cannot be caught inside the obituary. It is always on the observer side of that page. That observer is the sakshi, and the sakshi is the koatasta nitya akshara, the changelessly eternal, untouched by any modification whatsoever. The sakshi is not a state you enter. It is what you already are, prior to every state you have ever entered or left. It was functioning when you were 10 years old, when you were 40, when you were in grief, and when you were elated. The only thing that has changed is your knowledge of what that witnessing capacity is. That Atma, the self, is the Akshara expressed in the first person. If the imperishable is the unchanging substratum that supports all change without being touched by it, and if the Sakshi is the unchanging awareness that supports every experience of body and mind without being touched by their modifications, then the Sakshi and the Akshara are not two different things. They are one recognition stated twice, once cosmically, once personally. The body continues, thoughts continue, the world continues, but the address has changed. You are no longer standing inside the perishable, looking out at an uncertain world for security that never quite holds. You are the ground on which the entire perishable display occurs. And that ground, as the movie screen taught us, does not burn. The knowledge that you are Akshara is not a consolation. It is a correction. Every anxiety about aging, every dread at the thought of death, every desperate attempt to secure yourself through relationships, wealth, or reputation, all of it rests on a single premise, that you are the thing that can be lost. Remove that premise, and the structure of suffering built on it has no ground to stand on. This is not suppression of fear. It is the recognition that the one who was afraid was a case of mistaken identity. When you identify as the Kshara, the body, the mind, the accumulation of experiences, every change is a threat. The body's illness is your illness. The mind's confusion is your confusion. The world's instability is your instability. You are, in every moment, a mortal trying to survive. When discrimination has done its work and identification shifts to the Kutastha Nitya Akshara, the changeless witness, the screen that has never been burned, change continues. But it is no longer personal. The body ages. You observe it. The mind passes through grief. You observe that too. The observer does not age with the aged body or grieve with the grieving mind. Moksha is not a future event, not a destination reached after death. The Sakshi was never in the fire. You were the witness of samsara, never its prisoner, but you did not know it. Moksha is that knowing. We are Akshara, pure, imperishable consciousness, temporarily appearing to animate a body-mind instrument that is fully Kshara. The instrument is borrowed. The one who uses it is not. Swami Paramarthananda states this without decoration. We are not human beings requiring spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. This shift does not make the world disappear or render relationships meaningless. The Kshara still functions exactly as it did. The body still needs food. The mind still engages with work and love and loss. But the relationship to all of it changes when the one who is relating is no longer mistaken about what they are. There is engagement without the terror that comes from believing the self is at stake in every encounter. The Gita's word for the completeness of that self is purna, limitless. lacking nothing. A person who knows themselves as Purna does not pursue the world to become whole. They engage it freely, from fullness rather than from need. The Akshara does not survive death because it was never born. It was the ground the whole time.